Joshua and Caleb lead that. Oh, there is so much in that text. So we talked about it all week. I decided I was going to preach on it too because I love it. And we just talked about how to take, and of course it's very simple in the children's curriculum, and how we could ask questions that would be appropriate for teens. Well, if teens are anything like me, I probably didn't have a great working knowledge of the children of Israel and all that happened. So there's a lot of content that we can teach and that I want to remind you of today. And I'm going to be in Joshua chapter 14, and that is verses 6 through 12. Joshua 14, 6 through 12. And so this is Caleb and what happens at the end of his life. Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, in Kadesh Barnea concerning you and me? I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him an honest report. But my companions, who went up with me, made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, saying, Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. And now, as you see, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, so he's 85 at this point, since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses. While Israel was journeying through the wilderness, and here I am today, 85 years old, I am still as strong today as I was on the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then for war and for going and coming. So now give me this country, this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day. I think King James says, give me this mountain. Give me this mountain. For you heard on that day how the Anakim were there with great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out, as the Lord said. Then Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for an inheritance. So Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this day, because he wholeheartedly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. Now the name of Hebron formerly was Kiriath Arba. This Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim, and the land had rest from the war. So that is how Caleb ended. Do you know what? Sometimes I think that it is as important to end well as it is to begin well. It might be more important to end well than to begin well. So where's Moses in all this? This is the part that I'm going to study about and preach maybe next week. Moses had wandered around and led the children of Israel for 40 years. And at the end of those 40 years, God they found themselves hungry and thirsty. Long story, but God gave Moses a command to not strike the rock, but to speak to the rock to produce water. And when he went to the people to produce water, he didn't do what God said. He struck the rock twice with his stick. Oh, there's so many things in that. But because he disobeyed God, God said, you're not going to get to go into the promised land. And he didn't. He got to look into it, and he's buried just outside of the promised land, but he didn't get to go in. And Jeff and I were like, man, this seems unfair. I don't understand. My Western mind can't understand why God was so tough on Moses. I mean, if he didn't get to go in because of that one time of disobeying, then what am I? Chopped liver. But I did some reading, and there's so much wrapped up in that. I'm going to preach on that next week, on Moses' not getting to go in. So set that aside for right now. So here we are, standing at the edge of the promised land with Caleb and Joshua. And they were the only two left from the original Israelites. The only two left. Let me see who that is. It apparently is Greg, her oldest son, that has COVID. That lives with her, yes. So, oh my gosh, Caleb and Joshua. Rewind 40 years. God had brought the Israelites across the Red Sea. He provided manna, the Ten Commandments. I mean, all of the ways that God had provided. And there they found themselves at the edge of the promised land 40 years ago. And so they sent in 12 spies to check it out. One from each tribe, and Caleb and Joshua were two. Now that is in Joshua. But in the middle of all that spy story, you have the story of Rahab, which I've preached before, and that's in another book, that Rahab helped the spies and gave them her home. Switch back, the spies come back with a report, and they say, man, the land is flowing with milk and honey, and the grapes were so huge that they had to carry them on poles. And the people that live there are really, really, really big giants. They're really big people. Now, of the 12 people who reported, 10 said, yeah, it really is a land of milk and honey, but boy, are those people big. I'm not so sure. I don't think we can do it. And Joshua and Caleb said, yeah, man, haven't y'all seen what God's been doing? We can do this. 12 people who saw the same thing, who have completely different reports. It's all about how you frame it. Words are so important, people. Your framing of words can kill something dead. You can take away the mystery and the potential of God with your words. So, Joshua and Caleb were like, no, really, we can do this. God's promises are true. Let's do it. Let's go in and invade and take over Jericho. And the 10 people said, and who did the people believe? Anybody know? They believed the 10 spies. And what did it say in that text? That the people's hearts were melted. They just went, oh, we can't do this. And so Joshua and Caleb, they were like, oh, come on. Well, at that point, God said, you guys are going to wander. And they wandered around a pretty small area for 40 years. Until everybody in the first generation that was over 20 years old died. Except Joshua and Caleb. Wow. What are the implications of that? I don't ever want to be a part of the people that need to die off to keep progress from happening in the Lord. Another sermon that I'm going to preach in the near future is the story of Southport Baptist Church that literally is closing its doors. 20 years ago, we had 3 full-time pastors and 360 people in worship on Sunday mornings. I'm going to do anatomy of the death of a church. And it is pretty much like the 10 spies and the 2 spies. It really is. I didn't even plan on saying that. But somebody needs to do a study on what happened. Really. It was one of the most prominent American Baptist churches in our region. At one point, we were giving 25% of our budget to missions. What happened? It was a Caleb and Joshua versus the 10 spies scenario. I don't ever want to be somebody that needs to die off so God can do his work. Amen. This is totally brand new and not part of what I was going to preach. Can you tell I need to process this? You guys are the result of my processing. My prayer is that it's just godly. And I think it means so much to me because I spent almost 15 years of my life with that congregation. And to see it die has been a real death. So I can relate to Joshua and Caleb. But there are three things that I can pick up about Caleb that helped him end well. And the first thing that I can attribute to Caleb is he was patient. Okay, have you ever known what the answer to something is and everybody in the group says, no, that's not it. But you know that's the answer and they don't take you seriously, and so the group moves on without you? It's hard to stick and be faithful to that group, isn't it? Caleb stuck it out. He was patient because he had faith for the future. He had waited upon the Lord long, dark nights and held fast to his dreams. Well, we only need to look at, in our history, missionaries who have done the same thing. I mean, famous missionary William Carey, he toiled for 7 years in India before his first Hindu was converted. And you've heard me talk about Adoniram and Judson and how long they toiled in Burma before they had their first convert, at least 7 years. And he lost his wife in Burma, and it was not an easy life. And he says, he wrote back to the churches in England because they were like, hey, we're paying for you and you're not having any converts. And he says, I beg the churches to have patience. As if a ship were here to carry me to any part of the world, I would not leave my field. Tell the brethren, success is as certain as the promise of a faithful God can make it. Is that not Caleb? Success is as certain as a faithful God can make it. And when the 12 spies came back, they all agreed it was a glorious place, but only Joshua and Caleb were willing. Only Joshua and Caleb saw the vision. Only Joshua and Caleb remained to see the vision happen. His experience had taught him not to give up. His experience had taught him to say at the end, God, give me this mountain that you promised me. I've been waiting all this time. Got the t-shirt. Caleb number 2, this is a 3 P's sermon. He was positive. He was positive. How in the world did he remain positive with every day that he grew older? Holding up that dream. He realized God wasn't finished with him yet. Hey guys, if you're alive and breathing, God is not finished with you yet. There is something you can do for the kingdom. It might be on the phone, it might be in the mail, it might be in your prayer time, but you are not done. Thank you. God can use you in some way, and if you need me to help you find that way, I will. He was positive, and he used his power for good. His tongue he used for good. I don't think Caleb went around saying, oh, well, we wouldn't be in this place if y'all listened to me 20 years ago. We wouldn't be in this place if you'd listened to me 25 years ago. He kept being positive. In James 1:26, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Whoa. I love Caleb's positive spirit. He was patient. He was positive. And he was persistent. Mercy, was he persistent. For 40 years, do you think he got tired of wandering around and listening to the whining and the complaining? And all the time, God was meeting their needs with manna. And they got tired of manna burgers and manna pasta and manna smoothies, and they complained. Oh my goodness. It's almost like we Baptists compare faith versus works. What's more important, having faith or putting action to your faith? Here's a little story. A little girl confessed to her pastor that her brother had set a trap to catch all the wild creatures which wandered through their backyard. Now that's patience. But then she went out and kicked his traps anytime he set them, because she felt like she loved those little critters and didn't want her brother to kill them. Now that's putting action to your words. Her brother set the traps. She bided her time. She went out and kicked the traps closed because she wanted to save the animals. That's action. So we need to not only have faith, but we need to have works. Now, Caleb's work was being a persistent presence and leading the children of Israel. And he was faithful to God in his difficulties. He was persistent, and he was going to go and not stop as long as there was breath in him. Now, imagine what God would do with us if we had patience, positivity, and persistence about the faith, about the promises of God. He wants us to know that we can face our spiritual giants. Remember last week I said pain is inevitable, misery is optional. Pain is inevitable, misery is optional. That's what I'm talking about. Being positive, being patient, and being persistent. We will receive the promises of God if we don't give up hope, never give up hope or doubt and into doubt and despair. And if we do these things, we can be like Caleb, and we can say, God, give me this mountain. Moses, one of the greatest biblical characters that we know, who did incredible things. He never got a handle on his anger, because one of the reasons that he took his own initiative and struck the rock with his rod was because he was so mad at the Israelites, instead of doing what God said. He didn't end well. Now, what did that mean? Moses still was with God. Moses still had God's presence with him. We can't negate the wonderful things that Moses did, but he did pay a price. He did pay a price for his disobedience. And I know that on that day when he looked over into the promised land, there probably was a sense of, oh, thank you, God, that we're here and that my people will get to go in. But I'm sure he was disappointed too. I mean, so disappointed. So contrasting Joshua and Caleb to Moses, we can see how important it is to end well. Sometimes I think about what I might have to go through before I die, and I wonder, am I going to end well? Is God going to keep my heart soft? Is God going to keep my mouth controlled? Is God going to give me the strength to get through whatever it is? And even today, I wonder, is God going to give me the strength to get through this pandemic? Is God going to give me the strength to take my kids to college? Is God, my baby, the next 2 weeks, I need your prayers. My baby. He's not a baby anymore. But I'm going to be, it's more about me than it is them. Feeling sorry for myself. Is God going to give me the strength? I want to be a Caleb. I want to be positive, patient, and persistent. And I encourage you to find strength in Caleb's story. And come back next week, because we're going to talk again about Moses and about that all that transpired and what it really meant in the mind of an Israelite in that day and that time. Let's bow for a word of prayer. God, your word just excites me so much, and what I can learn from it, and I just learn to trust